My next guest on the Rock Comedy Tour podcast is an old friend, and he's not old, but he's an old friend, super talented actor, writer, improv artist, sketch. I mean, this guy does it all. I'm so excited to talk to my good friend Michael Stoyanov. It's been a long time. How are you, brother?
I appreciate it, Mike, so much. And let me just take a minute on that not old front, saying you look so good, buddy. I mean, I've known this guy a long time, and I mean, not only is this all still like youthful somehow, people can't see it,
It's
but because I got
blueberries.
the hat on. But I think
Yeah.
I picture Mike going in and getting a haircut in like 1994, and just being like, you know what, I like this haircut. I think I'm locking it in. Mike
Yo,
Young is locked in his haircut 35 years ago, and I respect that because I have had every sort of like momentarily hip fad
yeah,
haircut going back to the 80s. The Boy George, the George Michael, the
yo,
Caesar. I
yo,
cut it all for the Caesar, grew it all back for the Fabio. I had the
yo,
Braveheart, with the little pony and then like a
yo.
bunch still cascading. I've man bunned, like I've done it all, man. And I just
I'm
respect
not.
respect your
I'm
loyalty to the haircut. It's it's amazing.
Stoyanov. I met you I met you with the George Michael. I knew you through the man bun. I we stopped talking
Did
during
you
the
see the Clooney?
Caesar.
Did you get to see the Caesar era?
I missed the Caesar era, but I think I saw you again in the Clooney. So that's how
Yeah.
long I've known
And I
you.
know you saw me rocking the Braveheart or the American Samurai, depending on which movie,
Oh, the
the
samurai
Tom
was
Cruise,
strong.
just a little, you know,
The samurai was when we were going in the boxing gym together and kind of skipping a little
I
rope,
think
hitting
so.
the pads. You were
Mike says
strong.
together like
You were
like he and
strong.
I had like epic like spar battles. Like the guy, he's a monster, and I'm not. We'll leave it there. Like there's no way I could ever get in the ring with Mike Young. This is a big man. But I
Yeah,
appreciate you
I'm
flossing with
185.
me.
Yeah. So anyway, story off.
185. You know how fat I would have to be 185. Like
Very.
I'm 5'7" in the mornings on a good day, like before my spine compresses back to 5 and a half.
Yeah, you're
So like
147, Marvin Hagler weight. You'd have to fight Hagler back in the day.
exactly. I mean, he frankly was mostly a middleweight at 160, but we can get into that later.
I think he fought Hearns at 147, no?
No, they must have fought at 154. I think.
I love it.
I
He's
think that
outboxing a
Leonard and
boxer.
Hearns, all those guys fought at either 154 or 160.
Okay. I used to talk
I don't
about
know.
how Tommy Hearns was 6'2", 147.
That's
Lean and
crazy.
mean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He
Yeah.
did.
But
He. Go ahead.
but Stoyanov, it's like I met you through Dave Lasher, our good mutual friend. And
Yes, absolutely.
like I said, listen, bro, Blossom wasn't my show as a child. I was friends with Lasher for 2 years before I even knew he was an actor. So the
So I mean, even myself, thank God for what we called kids VHS tape back in the
yeah,
day because I could record it, or my mom would certainly. But yeah, no, we go way back. And Lasher, another very haircut loyal guy, and I respect
loyal.
it. But like, yeah, like we've all, I have a lot of memories of David for sure, and then of you as well,
Let me
and
ask you
that's
something,
true.
Stoyanov,
Yeah,
because you're in the comedy world. Like it's interesting. Would you say you started out in the acting game simultaneously in the writing game, or did it evolve come from acting and then all of a sudden you just knew you were funny and had talent as a writer and it evolved that way?
100% an actor. I went to Columbia College in Chicago and did plays and theater, and like my inspiration was sort of Steppenwolf and like Sinise and Malkovich and those kind of guys. But then also I did Second City and like got the improv grounding in Chicago. But I always came at comedy as an actor. But then, when I first got to Hollywood, the first 5 years, like the absolute dream was to be like Kids in the Hall, like me and like four guys that like I went to college with that we used to improvise and write sketches together. Like, so that's where I sort of crossed over as a writer and got jobs, was fortunate enough to find myself employed by Conan O'Brien and the Dana Carvey show. And like, but all that was always sort of geared towards like, let's get a sketch comedy show. Like I never, like, I think I'm a better actor than writer. And like, I'm pretty good in the room, like for writing, but like I mean, I've been in the presence of like just incredibly talented writers, and like I feel like Salieri, like in Amadeus. I'm like I can see it, I can see how these freaking geniuses. Why am I not? Where's my like stroke of genius idea? And like, so right. I mean, I was real good at like filling in, like coming up, like remember the year 2000 bit in the year 2000. Like, they did that like 25 times, and you would have to refill them, come up with funny like things that already existed where you needed a joke that was already set, like the style, the genre. Like I was pretty good at that, and less good at like coming up. The one sort of thing I came up with that lasted on Conan and it got done like many times after I'd left the show. Someone else would just helmet was the satellite dish where he would, and this was like again at the very beginning of like direct TV and like the 500 channels. You know, the dream had finally been realized in like whatever the mid 90s. So like he'd flip around to all these channels and like, you know, joke channels, obviously. And yeah, that was like my one sort of long lasting contribution to the show. But that was a great time in my life working at 30 Rock with like guys like Louis and other like really Chuck Sklar and Tom Agna, like old school comics, Brian Kiley, like those were the monologue guys. And they were, it was just a really fun time and just being surrounded by Robert Smigel was our boss, who is a guy who like, he never sleeps. He's some kind of robot, so you should never sleep. You know, like something would happen because it was a topical show, Conan. So like something would happen at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and Robert would be like, "Listen, we need to get in the room and like come up with a sketch for this." Like, and so, oh, it's great. So we're gonna be here till 5 a.m. That's freaking great, you know. And so it was a mixture of like just arduous, hard work, but the thrill of like I'm sitting in a writer's room at 30 Rock, like coming up with ideas for, you know, the guy who's got the 12:30 spot, Letterman spot. You know, this is it doesn't get any better than this in terms of like that vibe and that like feeling that you're succeeding. Go home. Like that was not, you're not supposed to go home. But no, like we would have pitch meetings to fill the grid. You know what I'm saying? Like there'd be, and no, we did Monday through Friday, and then eventually it got shortened to Monday through Thursday. But there had to be an act one after the monologue. There was usually a bit, an extended bit, then a little like pop before act two, like just a little like Tamari the ostrich. I don't know if you remember her. Like this, like Jim Muppet would come out and like lay an egg and he'd crack it open and it would be the next night's guests. Like it'll fold it up in the yolk. Like that was like a little act two. It takes like 25, 30 seconds. And then act four was another place where there'd be an extended sketch. So you would pitch your best ideas and those could be more evergreen. They didn't have to be like super, you know, contemporaneous or, you know, like tied to current events. And yeah, so go ahead.
Writing gig you had, like where you had to actually follow act one, act two, act three, commercial break? Was that
Yeah,
the first
for sure. It
time
was my
you
first.
got
And
in the
again,
grid?
my friend Dino Stamatopoulos, who had broke through writing on the Ben Stiller show, which then they, you know, Fox in all its in wisdom canceled it. Then it won the Emmy for writing. So they're like, oh,
Does
well,
anyone
maybe.
know anything?
But so he had gotten in, he was working, and they were writing promos before the show was even on the air. And I was like, can I take a crack at a few of these promos? And I wrote a few and they liked them and they were like, they produced them. They got actually some of the first stuff ever made on the show was, again, I'm so fortunate that it was my material. And like that inspired me to be like, well, let me try and put a packet together. And like right now I'm on this sitcom, I'm on Blossom, but like maybe I can come and do like a
Side gig.
executive internship or something where I come and I write for the summer. And that's what happened. Like I wrote and Robert Smigel read the stuff and was like, yeah, we could give this kid a shot. And like, so I came out in my hiatus between like third and fourth season and spent an amazing summer in New York City and wrote for Conan at the very beginning. And it was a lot of fun. But that's,
Was
yeah,
there
it was definitely my first exposure to the world of writing, late night
was there
comedy.
was there was there any strange dynamic knowing that like you had just made a fat check every week as an actor on a hit show and then coming over into the writing world and these guys are like, yeah, we'll hire this. Like, did they know? They knew you were on the
I mean,
show, right? Like they
it was a
knew.
little bit. It was a little bit for sure. Like, I mean, it was a writers. This was back in the day when almost all shows were still actually union shows, Writers Guild shows. So everyone was
Yeah,
in the union making a pretty decent buck. But I
yeah.
mean, there was still definitely a gulf, and like, yeah, there was like a learning curve. Like, who do I see about getting lunch? Who do I, and they're
You
like,
know, you
nobody. Go get your own freaking lunch, guy.
our intern just pulled up in a Panamera.
Exactly.
Right, you're pulling up looking slick.
Right, exactly. They had to come to me and be like, "Hey, man, we put you up. We put you up at the plaza just for a few days to get settled. We noticed you're still there. It's been 3 weeks. Can you?" And I was like, "Oh, that's not my. You're not providing a hotel room for me for the summer." And they're like, "No."
That's hilarious.
So
Did Smigel ever do stand up or was he just a
I don't think he ever
no
did. Again,
name brilliant?
he came out of Chicago, and again, sketch comedy and like improv groups, and he got onto SNL obviously really early and was an absolute standout right away. Like he generates material at an incredible rate of, like, it's just amazing, like, and how many widely varied he's got it all. Like, he's a great producer, he's a great punch up guy, he's just the best, probably the best writer I've ever seen, writer producer of late night comedy for sure. And I do not know that I ever saw or heard of him doing stand up, though. The
Yeah.
closest he gets is Triumph, is the Triumph
Sure.
character,
Yeah.
which is so fucking funny. Oh, oops, sorry, but
No, you can curse.
okay.
Yo, they let Triumph on Hollywood Squares and he
I
was off
saw
the
some of that.
Richter scale. He was off the Richter. I mean, that's pretty genius. It's
It's a
pretty
great
genius.
character, and I remember it be like the inception. Like, it started on Conan, I'm pretty sure, and yeah, it just became. He was also brilliant at recognizing what had like legs and was marketable, like
Yeah.
really marketable, and things he should do his best to keep control over and the rights of on. So he's just as smart. He's inspirationally
Yeah.
intelligent on about every level you could think of it for in the industry.
Was he one of the writers on that Conan show? Conan, I went and saw Conan live with Smigel talking on a panel.
I'm sure he was.
And there was that show that Conan came up with. I think he was playing like a detective, and it was like the most tongue-in-cheek, crazy show.
That
And it
sounds
was
fun.
pretty genius. Obviously, they canceled it like right away.
Right.
Like there, but I was wondering if you knew about that show or if like you were even aware that there was like this little
I don't
moment
know
in
anything
time.
about that, but that definitely sounds like with Conan and Robert, they conceived of just about everything in regard to Late Night with Conan O'Brien
Yeah,
together. You know what I mean? The feel of it, and
yeah.
like Conan's persona and how the comedy was going to look. And that does sound like something he would do. I mean, despite his genius, he's also like made some like classic misjudgments. Like the Dana Carvey show is probably the most epic. Like, our lead-in was Home Improvement, like, and we were doing like the most out there, like dangerous, like questionable stuff, and like ABC was immediately like, "What are you doing? You've got
That's
Bill Bill
amazing.
Bill Clinton like with like dog nipples, like milking a puppy. Are you insane? You're canceled. You're done. You're done. End of discussion." Like literally after like episode 2, and
So that's a big business, right? So business wise, they're like, we got the greatest softball ever being served in Tim
right,
Allen opening up our show to millions of people. We're gonna be a smash hit. But the second thought that they didn't have was Tim Allen's blue collar,
exactly.
you know what I mean? Basically religious, you know what I mean? Fan base is about to see nipples on a
Exactly.
dog.
They're
Yeah.
like, well, we wanted like the Carol Burnett show or the Muppet Show, and it's like, well, why did you hire Dana Carvey, Robert Smigel, Louis C.K., Stephen Colbert, and Steve Carell? Then, like, you got the wrong set of people for that to have happened. Like, of course, it was going to be like envelope pushing and
Right.
edgy, like really disturbingly at times edgy. Like, there was
When
just,
you
there was, go ahead.
when you were in those rooms, right? Was there ever a moment during that show, like in the beginning, where you're like, oh, well, this is this is a 10-year run in this room.
Oh,
This
I mean,
is
everyone felt that, yeah, it was going to be, or at least be given the leeway to find its sort of sea legs. And like, like shows tend to start out, a little clunky. Even the best of shows, the shows that go on to be like perfection or
right.
classics, there's still a learning curve. And we thought like, well, with this assemblage of people we're going to get, and like the hype on it, and like Dana was at his sort of zenith at that
Right.
point. And again, Steve Carell and Steve Colbert, essentially their first jobs, it was like,
Damn.
the casting, obviously those people were very sharp, they chose very wisely. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it was it was
A,
just too
a
edgy.
moment.
Hmm?
It was just a moment in time for you. Just looking back, it had to just be this crazy moment where you're like, canceled. What are you talking about?
I mean, I
It was
honestly
like you
spent
must have
most
been supposed to be the wrong phone call.
of my exactly, you got the wrong guy. Who did this can't be us. No, I spent
No.
most of my time like riddled with anxiety because, again, like I said, like Louis wrote on that. Louis was our boss. Louis C.K. was the head writer. Smigel was the executive
Wow.
producer. Colbert and Carell were in the cast, and they're both pretty talented writers in their own right. Charlie Kaufman went on to write to win the Oscar,
Yeah.
and like is a legendarily talented screenwriter. He was a writer. I literally spent a lot.
Wow.
Robert Carlock, who then went on to do Kimmy Schmidt and 30 Rock and a bunch of other things. John Glazer, like everyone I'm naming, I just would. I have the Salieri syndrome. I'm like, what am I doing? When are they going to be like,
Oh my
like
God.
unmask me as a total fraud and ask me to either go get them lunch or just leave outright? Like I was, so I spent a lot of time like really, and again, I was very lucky to have a few like read through hits like that people liked and got good laughs, and that felt good. But like it's still, I felt like I was kneeling at the feet of like a lot of masters.
Yeah.
Bob Odenkirk came through and like spent a week. Like that's the relationship in late night comedy. Like people, everyone knows everyone, and like like writers, like will come and be like, I'll do a couple days. Usually without compensation or with like very little compensation. And it's just
Right.
definite team effort. And like, so we had just a lot of talented people involved with the show. And it lasted a grand total of 2 episodes on the air.
Oh my God. How many did you shoot? How many did you put in the can?
I think maybe 6 or 7.
Right. So there's 4 episodes sitting in a can
I think
somewhere. No
so.
one's
I think
seen.
so.
They buried them.
We shot enough material, I think, for 6 or 7. I don't know if they edited them together, like once we
Yeah.
got the news, because the news came
Damn.
down pretty fast. So
Yo,
uh,
Was Louis in like the beginning stages of his stand-up, or was he also already known as a stand-up during that
he
moment?
was definitely a popular New York City stand up. He wasn't
Right.
like he hadn't like risen up. I don't think he'd had a special yet or anything like that. I saw him a year or 2 later, I think, at the old Aspen Comedy Festival.
Yeah.
And his set, most of his set was what was then, I think, his first special. The thing about he gets arrested and they strip search him, and
Yeah.
they wanted to keep his
Yeah.
hands up and they're like, lift your balls. He's like, I mean, like with magic, like rise, like that joke, which is
Yes.
like that,
Oh
all
my
that sort of
God.
era of material was what he was doing then a few years later. So, but he was definitely like passed at the Cellar and like all the sort of earmarks of a
No.
guy who was going to make a lot of noise in your field. So by then,
Yeah. He pushed the envelope heavy.
he was a pusher
He,
of
he put,
envelopes.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
so funny because I come from, being from Detroit and blue collar, you always kind of come into the game with like a little fear. Like I
Hmm.
gotta be honest, and Louis and a lot of these guys, I always respected their lack of what seemed like just a lack of fear, a lack of getting canceled on, even we didn't know he'd get canceled later for a moment,
But
but like,
not for on stage behavior, to be fair.
you know what I mean?
But listen, I I tried. I'll admit that a few times. I was like, at some point in my life, I was like, why can't I do this? I'm always people say I'm funny. I'm a comedy writer. I'm a comedic actor. It's so hard. It's so much harder, and like the difference between like I will play a serial killer and run around naked on screen for an hour and 43 minutes if you want me to. Like I don't have any fear if I'm hiding behind the script, but the idea you're standing there alone in the universe
Yeah.
with a microphone, and it's like this is what I think is funny, and it's like it's I found it to be so difficult. I have immense
Yeah.
respect for you guys, and you're 1,000% right. The guys I would love were the guys who it didn't matter. Like not only obviously they're great and they mostly killed, but when they weren't killing, the way they handle, I'm like, this guy just doesn't give a fuck. This
Don't
is
give a damn.
amazing, and it's working. The little things he's saying in the midst of bombing are so
Yeah.
funny. Like I can't. I just you just start flop sweating, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I gotta. That's my. Like I thought I could do this. It's a 3-minute slot at an open mic. I'm wrong. I apologize. Please, I'll go now. Like that's what you feel like doing if you're a newbie, like when it's just not your jokes aren't hitting. So like I just have
Yeah.
immense respect for you guys.
It's so interesting because I had a chance to open for Drew Carey and his crew for like 10 shows, right? They
Right,
were on the
right. Of
road. They wanted a comedian to open for their improv
course.
group. And so
Sure.
I got to kind of see that. And it is a completely different mind because I wasn't good even when I did the groundlings. I didn't understand the rules. I
Come
was
on.
like
You had the haircut locked in. How are you
the
not
hair
good?
was
You look
locked.
young
The
already.
comedy was locked. I could write, but once they started like kind of putting the improv rules, I felt like for me there was like this little disconnect, and I knew
Right,
stand up was going to be my path.
right.
And but I had crazy respect for Drew and his whole crew because I would see them every
I
night
mean,
come
to be
on
fair,
stage.
you're
Yeah,
talking about you're suddenly thrust into a world with literally the like 5 or 6 best improvisers
yeah,
on the planet. It's
yeah.
not like you got to ramp up with like a regional show or like
Right,
some troupe,
right.
some college troupe.
Yeah.
You're literally like, here's Ryan Stiles and like Wayne Brady, and like,
Genius.
good luck, guy.
No, no, no. But by the way, I was just opening for them as a comedian. I would just watch their show. So they didn't have me in their I didn't
Right?
partake in their set at all. I would just be able to watch them do their thing and I was just enamored by like their
Yeah. I
minds
mean,
are just like
very
that
fast.
that yes and rule is a real thing.
Oh,
There,
for
wa- there
sure.
was there was no shutting anything down. They just
Like
kept
it's been
going and going.
tested, like all those formulas, the rule of three that applies. I know in your guys' world too. Like
Yeah,
jokes tend to be, in
in
groups of
threes.
three, topper being the third.
Yeah,
Yeah, like all that stuff has been tried and true and tested over the decades,
yeah,
or the centuries that we've been trying to make each other laugh. Like those are real. Yes, and is a real thing, and if you follow it, it's generally going to go a lot better than if you don't. Also,
right.
if you're like a no guy or you go for the cheap joke by like making someone look like a clown by being like, "What are you talking about? I'm not that person you just said I was." Like,
Right.
people don't like you.
You
People
can't
don't
shut
want
it
to work with
down.
you. They don't want to
Yeah,
improvise with you. Like it's a
yeah.
twofold rule that works on both levels.
Do you have a favorite? Are you happier when you're doing when you're acting? Are you happier in a writing room? Where's your like? Are they two sides of the same coin? Like, do you care
I
if do you love
love,
both?
I do love both, and I have a lot of fond memories of writing and writing rooms. But I honestly feel like I'm in my my natural setting, my expertise, my field of expertise is acting. I think I'm a much better actor, and I think because I do like mostly since Blossom, I've ended up doing like 1 hour like drama, like Billions and Justified, and so and like I think I'm a better actor, and I think more importantly, Hollywood thinks I'm a better actor. So I definitely get more work as an actor than I do as a writer. I was fortunate enough to hook on in a world late night comedy where like word of mouth, where then like I worked on Conan, and then Robert was going on to Dana Carvey, and he called me and was like, "Do you want a job? Do you want to write for Dana Carvey?" Like there was no, you know what I mean? If they know you and they like working with you, you tend to like you will get more jobs You know what I mean? It just like
For sure.
snowballs. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, but
You got to
definitely,
be right. You got to have your talent, but you got to be good in the room too, right?
yes,
I'm sure you've seen your share of writers that were just so difficult that we're like, we don't care how genius you are.
right.
You're too tough to work with.
It's
You know what I
that's a
mean?
thing for sure.
It's
And there are some
insane.
people that aren't great in the room or aren't like again, Charlie Kaufman, one of the most talented writers I've ever met, hands
Right.
down, but not like you're holding your sides and like you wish you had an adult diaper on. He's making you freaking laugh so hard. Like
Right.
he's just not that guy. But
Right.
he's still. I'm in awe of him as a writer, as a creator
Yeah.
of story. Like he's just one of the most brilliant guys I've ever met or worked with. But so there's like the stand-ups tend to be really good in the room.
Right.
Surprise, surprise. They're
Right.
super comfortable, like throwing out jokes, like just like a machine, so
Right.
they tend to be good at that. Their personalities are generally gregarious and outgoing. They're
Right.
extroverts, so like that lends itself well to the room. And then
Uh-huh.
yeah, so go
Was
ahead.
Louis? No, I'm sorry. Okay. Was Louis a story guy just as much as he was a punch guy?
Louis
Like,
was
because he was
great
a
at
boss. Yeah, he
he
was.
was good at all of it. He was good. He pitched his stuff was really good. His ideas for the board on pitch day, and then he was
Yeah.
great at punch up, and he was a great producer. One of the best things about working at Conan was you were in control. You were basically a producer too. If you pitched something and it got on the grid and it required some remote shoots and like, you know what I mean? You were
Yeah.
there. You were the director that day when you went to shoot it. And then
I
you
love
were
that.
in with the editor cutting it together. Like you handled the piece from inception to air, which was a great education and just a great. I missed that in just about every other show, where like you write a piece, you hope for the best, and then you hand it off, and like the machine of the production takes over. There's a
Yeah.
director. There's you don't get to sit in on editing. That's the director. Like you basically you surrender it. You know. So,
That's
but
so
Louis was great
interesting.
at all of it. Louis was really good at every aspect of it.
It's so funny because being from Detroit, like, I've made a few movies now, right? And those skills that you're talking about as a kid growing up, where'd you grow up? Chicago?
Chicago,
Where'd you
Evanston, also Minnesota, rural Minnesota, till like seventh grade, eighth grade.
Right. So like thinking about like the Hollywood stuff when you're a kid in those type of towns, I don't know, it's very I always felt a little like as I would learn these skills of like producing or directing and like tying it
Right.
all together, something about being from Detroit, it kind of like there was always like a little space between I'm like, am I really producing something? Like, is this what it is? You know what I mean? I don't know. I always had like maybe it's the blue collar mentality, maybe it's like the poor, I could always be broke, you know what I mean, in my mind
Right.
mentality.
Yeah, sure.
But but I feel like guys who came up in New York, like more in the New York scene, I don't know, they were kind of, or if your family was from Hollywood, it just
Yeah.
it's kind of part of your fabric. You know what I mean? They kind of
I
gravitate
think
towards it.
if you're
They
from New
do.
York, and obviously if you're from LA, the mystique of California writ large, the whole state. Like if
Right.
you're from the Midwest, you're like, wow, California, it's
Yeah,
this totally
dude.
unique, original place. It's always warm. Like, they invented skateboarding. Like all, it's just the super coolest place. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, I recognized like middle school. I was like, I would love, man, it would be amazing to be an actor. Like I knew that. And then I went to high school in Evanston, Illinois, and I happened to go to high school, same graduating class with John Cusack. So suddenly it was brought he was a huge star by the time he was a senior in high school. So like it was brought like right into my face, like, oh wow, Hollywood, this is Hollywood. It's happening. I'm learning via osmosis a shit ton about it. And it's feasible, it's possible. And so like that,
Yeah.
it really, I don't know if that made me like more convinced, like, you know what, I'm gonna try this, I'm gonna do this. Cause I did, me and a buddy, we like headed to California, to LA in 1962 Mercury Comet in like the
Yeah.
early 90s, and I was like, we're gonna do it, and like we had $1,000, like total for our life. And it was like, we're going to do it until this foul runs out. And then we'll probably just head back to Chicago. Like, let's fucking face it. We don't know anyone in LA. The Night Stalker is at that point is running around killing people. Like, we just need to get the hell out of there if it doesn't happen right away. And I was super fortunate. Like, I got a job the first week. Like, again, like a little tiny part on a Ricky Schroeder TV movie. Like, this is how long it was what was called a TV movie. They don't even exist anymore.
No.
But I did that. And like, I remember my agent saying, like, now you might not get a job your first year. And I was like, if I don't get a job my first month, as soon as this money's out, I'm leaving and going back to Second City and Chicago theater. And like, but like, again, I got super lucky and like eternally grateful for the breaks I caught early on. And like, it happened for me, at least on a small scale, like, and like, I'll forever be grateful to the universe for giving me that.
For keeping you there.
Exactly. For giving me little tidbits enough to get through.
Well, yo, Stoyanov, I would go for an hour with you, bro, but your boy Lasher scheduled all these.
No, I got it.
Tight. So we're scheduled. Someone's in the room. Damn.
Man, listen, I feel like this was wasn't keeping track, but this was longer than 15. And I'm great. Again, it was a lot of fun talking to you. Good luck with everything. Anyone out there, casting directors, if Mark Maron is going to need a brother in anything coming forward, please call my agent. Although the last time I talked to my agent, he couldn't talk to me because he was judging a limbo contest on the beach in St. Bart's. So I don't know. I'm not sure he's still my guy, but I will talk to you soon.
Stoyanov, appreciate you, bro. I hope to see you soon, buddy.
You too, man.
Thanks for doing this.
Congrats on all this.
Okay.